Hello, everyone. How are you today? I am currently just getting things squared away. I am going to be talking today about why animals do what they do. So we're going to be talking about all that fun stuff. So bear with me for 1 second while I just get prepared here. I'm just sharing the link right now on the Facebook page. If you haven't checked out the Facebook page, it's All Dogs Go to Kevin LLC. So check that out. We give a lot of information on there. You are able to, we can kind of live chat. So if you guys have any questions about anything I'm talking about, you can ask questions and I'll see them and I'll answer. But so basically, this channel is primarily about animals. It's about dogs, really, maybe some cats as well. I know that I put some other fun videos on there, like a beard shaping video, and I just uploaded a fun video in regards to how to get rid of hiccups. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's primarily about the dog training business. All Dogs Go to Kevin. Greetings from America to you in Germany, Nicoletta. So that's what it's primarily about. So that's what you're going to expect most of the time, but you will also see some fun videos. And what I do is I like to go live on occasion, whether it be on the Facebook page or whether it be on YouTube, which this is my second live video. So this is something that we'll be doing from time to time. But going live and just talking about animals, how they learn, why they do what they do is going to be the topic here. But we also just, sometimes it's Q&As, sometimes it's specific topics like play biting or jumping. So today we're talking about why animals do what they do. So let's jump into it. So a lot of people have dogs, a lot of people have animals. So technically all animals learn the same. I'll be specifically referring to dogs in most of my talks, but all animals learn the same. They learn one of two ways, either what's referred to as operant conditioning or what's referred to as classical conditioning. It's not important that you remember the terminology, but what is important is that you realize that operant conditioning basically means consequences. So a dog or an animal learns basically by consequences. So a certain behavior leads to what? So if an animal learns that crossing the street and going down this hill equals a water source, it's probably going to remember that area across the street and go to the water source. It's going to reinforce the behavior of crossing the street. If an animal, starts to cross the street and almost gets hit by a car and it scares them, or maybe even clips the animal, that would potentially punish the behavior of crossing the street. So those are consequences to behaviors. Now, if we go into day-to-day life with dogs, most of the unwanted behaviors that we see, behaviors that are unwanted to us, they're continuing because the dog is getting something out of it. Either the behavior is providing relief, so the dog realizes if I do this, something bad goes away, or more commonly, what ends up happening is the dog realizes that its behavior gets him something that he wants. So if he gets up on the counter, there's some food up there, or he gets up on the counter and he grabs this pen, and then the human chases him around and it turns into a game of chase. So those behaviors lead to consequences that the dog likes, which then, if it's working correctly, the behavior is then positively reinforced, which means it's likely to happen again. So there's four quadrants, if you will, when we talk about consequences. One is positive reinforcement, and that's probably the most common one that people know of or hear of. That's basically so positive reinforcement. So basically, dog gets on counter. Sorry, I was multitasking. Dog gets on counter, gets something that he likes. The addition of something means he's going to do it again. If dog sees a person and runs up to the person and jumps on the person and the person gives him attention, that's going to serve as the addition of something that the dog wants. It's going to reinforce the behavior. It's likely to happen again. Positive reinforcement, think about it as behavior. Dog does a behavior, or we do a behavior. Animal does a behavior. Something good comes from it. Something that we like is added after the fact. That's what's referred to as positive reinforcement. And so the behavior must repeat in order for it technically to be positive reinforcement. But that's the overall idea. So we also have, there's two positives and two negatives. So positive reinforcement is one, Positive punishment is the other thing. So positive means the addition of something. So positive doesn't mean good, yay, happy. It means the addition of something. So positive punishment means the addition of something that the dog dislikes, something that we refer to as an aversive. An aversive is something that the dog would like to avoid. So if examples of positive punishment could be hitting, yelling, kicking, adding something shocking, collar corrections. Those are forms of positive punishment, and technically only if they decrease the behavior, but just generally speaking. So you've got positive punishment, positive reinforcement. You have negative punishment, which means taking away something that the dog likes. So negative doesn't mean bad. Negative means the removal of something. So negative punishment, taking away something that the dog wants. An example of that would be getting a call from Romania at the moment. But an example of that would be, so dog wants to greet a person, the dog goes to jump on the person, and we add in the consequence of removing the dog from the person for jumping. If it's working correctly, then the dog is getting what it wants taken away, and that is the result of the behavior of jumping. So if we take away what the dog wants, or if something is removed that the dog wants when it does a behavior, that can fall under the negative punishment category. And last but not least is negative reinforcement. And this gets confused with punishment a lot for average pet owners. Negative reinforcement, it means that something is continuously happening that bothers the dog, that either hurts or scares the dog. And once the behavior happens, the thing ends. So basically, relief is provided. So if I were to have a choke chain on a dog, for instance, and I were to be holding it up in the air, the chain, so it was very, very tight, and I held it there until the dog sat, for instance, and then I dropped it, so it was no more pressure was happening, that would serve as negative reinforcement. So basically, the behavior of sitting would be more likely to happen in the future because that is what provides relief. Negative reinforcement in day-to-day life, things like if your dog is looking out the window and it sees something and your dog is getting your dog is upset because that the mailman is out there, your dog may start barking, and then the mailman leaves, and then your dog thinks that the barking is what provided the relief. So then your dog's like, oh, good, you're gone. So those are in general, though, those are the 4 quadrants. Those are the 4 ways that consequences can happen to behavior. And we can utilize those to get the behaviors that we're looking for, or just to get rid of behaviors that we don't want to see. The cool thing is that we can effectively just use 2 of those quadrants to change behavior. The 2 quadrants that I work with are positive reinforcement and negative punishment. So once again, positive reinforcement means adding things that the dog likes after a behavior happens. And then negative punishment means taking away things that dogs like after a behavior. So I don't use any negative reinforcement or positive punishment. Not that you can use them and they can work, but there's oftentimes side effects involved. And in order to use them, you must either hurt or scare your dog. And that's something that I don't want to do, don't need to do. So those are kind of out of the picture for me. So with that being said, if I want to teach my dog to not jump on counters, what I can do is I can say, okay, I know that if you get on this counter, something good's probably going to happen, and you're going to try it again and again and again. So there's a couple things I can do with the example of that is, one is I can try to keep counters bare, so there's no reinforcement up there. There's nothing good to get up there. That's one option, and that's definitely a good option. That's something that most people need to do anyway. The other option is I can use negative punishment and punish the dog for getting on the counter. So if I can catch the dog up there, I can say, too bad, and I can put them away. I can put them out of the environment where they want to be for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, a couple minutes, and that can decrease the frequency of the behavior. Dogs are very social creatures, so by timing them out, putting them away by themselves, that can effectively decrease behaviors. Another option that there is for the jumping on the counter is I can teach what we refer to as an incompatible behavior. And an incompatible behavior is a behavior that can only happen so basically it can't happen while another behavior is happening. What I mean by that is an incompatible behavior to jumping would be sitting. So if my dog is sitting, he can't jump. They can't do both. So those are incompatible. So what I can teach is how to lie down and stay, and that can be my incompatible behavior to jumping on the counter. So think of it that way. So we have options of management, so we can just strictly do our best to prevent the behavior from happening. We can punish the behavior, so we can say, hey, you did this behavior, this is the consequence. And if we do that effectively, the behavior will decrease. And we can teach incompatible behaviors. A lie down and a stay combined, it's a great tool to prevent a lot of the unwanted stuff from happening. So think of that kind of strategy, and I'll use a combination of all of that. So if I have a young dog in a house that likes to counter surf, I'm going to keep the counters as bare as possible, because getting up there and getting something, regardless of what it is often reinforcing to the dog, whether it's food or whether it's a pen. So I'm going to do my best to manage and keep the counters bare. If I catch him up there, I'm going to time him out instantly. Too bad, you're out of here. And if I'm in there and I'm doing something and I know that there's something appealing on the counter, what I'm going to do is reinforce incompatible behavior. So I'm going to say, hey, lie down and stay. And that is going to provide you with some positive reinforcement. I'm going to give you small food rewards for that. And if I'm doing my job correctly, you're not jumping on the counter. The cool thing is that using jumping on the counter as the theme here right now, as long as we can stop the reinforcement for getting on the counter, if we can be really strict about stopping that, we will see a huge decrease in the behavior. As long as the behavior receives reinforcement, it's going to stick around. If the behavior does not get reinforced, it's going to start to go away. And that's true across the board. So if my dog once a week gets up on that counter and gets a big payout, that behavior is always going to be there, because random reinforcement for a behavior oftentimes is the best if you really want to create a strong behavior, but it's hard to utilize in day-to-day life. So I always just recommend to my clients, just reward every behavior that you want to see every time. But anyway, so another option too is more management. So keep the counters bare, but also block off the kitchen when you're not in there, because it only takes a second for a dog to run in, jump on the counter, and then grab something, run out, and then we're in this position where, okay, now he's got the thing, and now he's trying to play a game of keep away, and it just kind of all spirals out of control from there. And then it turns into, how do I get the thing back? Should I chase him around? Should I try to rip it out of his mouth? Sometimes that creates what's called resource guarding. So it's just best to manage and then train the other behaviors, and then punish if you do catch them in the act. So those are just some examples of how I would train a behavior. So the other way that dogs learn, so we talked about consequences in the very beginning. I said operant conditioning, I said classical conditioning. So I really just focused heavily on operant conditioning, learning by way of consequences, right then and there. Now I'm going to talk about classical conditioning. Classical conditioning means learning by way of association. So dogs are always building associations with what's happening around them. So if every time someone comes over your home, good things happen to your dog in turn will have a positive association with people coming into your home. If every time you have someone over and your dog gets shocked or something, what can end up happening is your dog can build a negative association with people coming over, because every time someone comes over, I get a shock from my shock collar. And then with negative associations, that's when we end up having dogs that want to create space away from the thing that they have the negative association with, which leads to aggression. So they're always learning by way of association. The cool thing is that training the way that I recommend doing, with focusing heavily on positive reinforcement, you're going to have associations being built, and it's going to be positive associations. So if I'm walking down the street and my dog sees a person and I say, leave it, and then he leaves it, and I say, good boy, and he gets a treat for it, that person predicted the leave it, which predicted the food reward, which means, hey, when I saw that person, something good happened for me. If you think about associations with dogs, most dogs have something that really, really excites them. So the easiest example is a leash. So a leash is if you're going for a walk, you get the leash up. A lot of dogs get very, very excited when they see the leash, and that's because they have a very good idea that that leash predicts going for a walk. And what that does is that leash has helped. They built what's referred to as a positive conditioned emotional response towards that event, towards the leash. And so why that happened is because the leash came out and then they got to go for a walk. So in their brain, hey, every time I see the leash, something good happens. The other thing in regards to the leash is that for most dogs and most people, they go for a walk maybe once a day or every other day or every fourth day or third day or whatever. And then the walk is a huge payout. So the dog says, whoa, When that leash comes out, I get a huge payout. It doesn't happen all the time, so it creates really, really strong conditioning. Um, and so that's just one example. I asked a question on the Facebook page a few days ago. I said, are there certain words that you have to spell out for your dog in order to, because if your dog understands, here's the word and gets really excited, and everyone basically said, yeah, I've got to spell out this word or that word. It's all because of conditioning. If I look at my dog and say walk, and then I get the leash out and we go for a walk, it doesn't take long for him to figure out that the word walk predicts going for the walk, and then he's going to get very excited when he hears the word walk. Or treat or whatever. I just said treat, and my dog B over here just picked his head up off the ground. So a lot of people spell it out, and the dogs even catch on to that. So they're always learning by way of association as well. And that's important that you remember that, because what you do in the name of training can and will have a consequence. So if you are using things that hurt or scare dogs, there's a good chance that that dog is going to be building a negative association in certain contexts, and then you may end up seeing some aggression down the road. So your best bet is to not use any sort of collars that hurt or scare dogs, so any sort of choke chains, prong collars, or pinch collars, or shock collars. Those collars can change behavior, as I said, and in some cases they can change behavior very, very quickly, but there's a cost involved. You also want to avoid, like kicking dogs, and that might seem silly, but there's that famous dog trainer on TV called the Dog Whisperer, and he's very physical with the dogs. He does little heel kicks into their rib cages. That's got to be extremely painful. Imagine getting a heel to your ribs, and then think about the association. If I see another dog and all of a sudden I get kicked in the ribs, well, I'm probably going to start associating dogs with being kicked in the ribs, and it's going to make me dislike dogs a lot. And then also, it might make me probably dislike my handler too if he's the one kicking me in the ribs. So there's going to be associations going on there across the board. Anybody have any questions so far? Got a couple viewers, which is cool. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. So any questions so far, let me know. I'm just going to pause for a second. So, but every time a dog does a behavior, it's for a reason. So dogs don't just do behaviors for no reason, or animals in general. As I mentioned, the behavior that's happening is providing some sort of reinforcement, either positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, and that's why you're seeing the behavior continue. Dogs or animals, I'm going to continue to say dogs because that's what I'm talking about primarily, they don't do things to be jerks. They don't do things to spite you. They don't do things because they're being spiteful and they should know better. They don't do that. Dogs, they don't have any sort of moral compass built in, so they don't know right from wrong as much as it might seem like it. And a good example of knowing right from wrong in our brains is that if you come in and all of a sudden you walk in and there's garbage all over the floor and your dog looks guilty, that to the human's eyes, we say, well, here's all the garbage, here's my dog is cowering, he's obviously guilty, he knows what he did was wrong, and that's how we take it. But the thing is, what dogs don't know right from wrong, and here's the example. Well, I'm going to give an example in a second, but basically what the dog is associating at that moment is this garbage on the floor plus my human's presence equals something bad for me. So those signs that come off as guilt to us and the dog's brain, they're actually some sort of calming signals, and it's actually very stressed body language. So the dog is actually very fearful in that moment, and they're afraid of you. The thing is that they don't know that putting the garbage on the floor, getting it out and putting it on the floor is what's causing you to act that way. They just associate you coming in with the garbage on the floor with something bad. A good example is I was reading a book probably a year ago, and it's written by a bunch of veterinary behaviorists. And a vet behaviorist said he had a dog that kept getting in the garbage, so he put him away. And he had another dog, and he got home the one day, and the one dog that always got in the garbage was put away, and the other dog actually got into the garbage, and so it was obvious which dog got into the garbage because the one that was getting in the garbage previously was physically not near the garbage, couldn't get into it. So he goes and lets that dog out of the room. The dog comes out, sees the garbage, looks up at him, and just does the cowering, the guilty look. And it goes to show you he had nothing to do with it. But what his association was okay, human plus this equals nothing good for me, makes him nervous, makes him cower, makes him fearful. So it's not actually guilt, it's actually fear. So that being said, dogs, they don't know right from wrong. They're not doing it on purpose. Those dogs that you see in those videos and everything, they are so afraid in those moments. They would do, it looks like it's pretty good punishment, meaning they would do anything they could to avoid that happening again, but they don't know what caused it, which seems like, well, how can they not? But they're not advanced enough in their brains to figure out what it actually, why it's happening. Alter Eagle Productions was wondering what are some other dog training channels you could recommend? Just mine. Just my channel. Now there's some other good channels out there. Kiko Pup, KIKOPUP. She has a lot of good training videos out there. A lot of tricks stuff. So her dogs are really amazing in regards to teaching awesome tricks. Looney LP, hello Kevin, how are you? I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How are you doing today? Kiko Pup, that was a great one. Let me think. There's one, the science, and there's one called the science and something of dog training, I think, and that's another good one. You know, Zach George has some good videos out there. But you know, getting into technical training, I would say that there aren't many out there that have technical training. I would say that my channel, for instance, has really technical training steps, and a lot of them, I think Kiko Pup does, but a lot of the channels out there don't have very good, it's not broken down very well into steps that it's easy for you to see and to mimic. So just stick with this channel. No, I'm just kidding. If I can think of, I'm on the spot, I'm having trouble thinking of other ones, but so, anyway, you know, how to effectively change behavior. It's important that you, as a dog owner, are managing behavior so that your dog can't physically rehearse or can't get near or get to the thing that it wants to get to do the bad behavior. So management is very, very important. And as I said earlier on, management means preventing the unwanted behavior from happening. And if you're doing that, that means you're preventing the behavior from being reinforced. And if the behavior stops getting all its reinforcement, the behavior will go away. So management is extremely important. The other thing we can do is we can teach alternate behaviors, so incompatible behaviors. Do this instead. This behavior is incompatible with the bad behavior, and we need to reinforce that. So by reinforcing it, we make it more likely to happen again. And by reinforcing it, we're reinforcing, as I said, incompatible behaviors. So that means this behavior is going to be happening instead of the bad one. Your dog is then going to be more likely to do the behavior that's getting all the reinforcement. And lastly, we can punish the unwanted behavior by taking away what the dog wants. So if he wants, you know, to greet the person and he starts to jump, then we can take away the person's attention. If he wants to, if I'm eating a meal at the table and he jumps up on the table and tries to get it, I can time him out. Don't too bad. Put him away for a minute. And then what I can do is teach him an incompatible behavior. I can teach him to lie down on a mat and stay there, and that's where the good stuff comes from. So, you know, if I want to teach a dog not to pull on leash, it's good to find a tool that you can use to help decrease the pulling, so a head halter or a front attachment harness. And then what I want to do is teach the dog that pulling gets him nowhere, literally nowhere. If you pull, we're not moving. If you walk on a loose leash, you get to go in the direction you want to go to, you get food. That can be the result of walking on a loose leash. So just think of whatever the bad behavior is and think about, okay, what can I do to decrease it? What can I do to reinforce the opposite of it? And is there a way that I can manage against it? So those are kind of the general rules there. This is V for anybody that doesn't know. Hi V, what are you doing? All right, anybody have any other questions? So we got 8 of us, which is pretty cool. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm having a lot of fun with these. Tomorrow I'll be doing a live video on the Facebook page. If you haven't checked it out, facebook.com/alldogs, go to Kevin LLC. I'm not sure what the topic is going to be just yet, but you will see me on there doing the same type of thing. I do those usually on Fridays, but on this upcoming Friday, I'll be out of town, so I can't do it. So I'll be doing it a day early. So I'll hang around for a little bit, see if anybody else has any questions. Questions? I also plan on, in about a month, I'll have my home office will be different. I'll actually have a place without a bed in it. So I'll be able to shoot some videos live. And obviously, that's what I'm doing right now, but I'll be able to do some actual training live. So I'll start teaching some tricks and just demonstrating other behaviors that I'm just super limited on space in my current house. So that'll be pretty cool. So that's something you guys can look forward to. So I'll do a combination of some talks and then also some demoing, whether it be tricks, whether it be the behaviors that we go over that are helpful. We'll do that as well. All right, I'm gonna stick around for another minute or two, see if anybody else has any questions. And all dogs go to Kevin on Facebook. I think you all have already subscribed to the YouTube channel, but hit subscribe. That way you'll be alerted when new videos come out. You'll see them ahead of time before I post them anywhere, because this is where they come up first. If you're in Ohio, Northeast Ohio, come check us out. And or if you're in Eastern Tennessee, come check us out. Sandy E, I really enjoy watching your streaming videos. I can't think of anything at the moment. Thank you, Kevin. You're very welcome. I'm enjoying doing them. So, all right, I'm going to hit the road. Thanks for watching, everyone. Talk to you later. Until next time, bye.